Hi guys, today I am reviewing Eurovision Song Contest: The Story of Fire Saga. This just came out on Netflix on June 26th. It is a comedy slash music film starring Will Ferrell and Rachel McAdams. So, Will Ferrell plays Lars Eriksson, who grows up in Iceland. And the backstory a little bit on him is that as for some unknown reasons, his mom passed away very young, and he saw the Eurovision show on television, and for some reason that became his dream that one day he'll perform and win the Eurovision Song Contest. As Americans, we're not super familiar with Eurovision, but my wife is actually Norwegian, so she's very familiar with it. And I guess there's really no parallel for it in the United States. It's essentially it's a real contest, and it's pretty fabulous and amazing. And so this film kind of goes right into that world of the Eurovision Song Contest, and it seems like a perfect formula for a Will Ferrell movie. And it was actually really interesting to see Rachel McAdams in this role as well. So his dream is to win the Eurovision Song Contest, and he grows up with his little childhood friend who is played by Rachel McAdams. Her name is Sigrid Eriksdottir. So actually, it's kind of a little bit of a funny thing when I look back on it later, is that his name is Eriksson and her name is Eriksdottir, which is essentially the son and the daughter of Eric. And Eric Erickson is played by Pierce Brosnan. So there's a little bit of a recurring joke whether or not they're related in this film. And so it's also a little bit of play in the names that I didn't really see it until I read it later on. But she and him formed together this little Euro pop group where they go on to play local gigs where they're basically playing kind of like ABBA like covers. And overall, Will Ferrell's character is a little bit frustrated with his life, and he feels like a failure. In fact, his father is giving him a lot of pressure to move on with his life and to give up on this stupid dream. And he's this endless dreamer who is, his only way of being happy is to achieve this big goal. So there is a ton to work with in terms of the comedic world of this. I'm a fan of Will Ferrell. I've liked a lot of the SNL stuff. The old SNL stuff is amazing. Anchorman was really really funny. His little role in Wedding Crashers was funny. I wouldn't say that like I'm always down for every Will Ferrell thing, but it was exciting to see this. And actually, my wife is Norwegian, so kind of getting into some of the Scandinavian culture and the humor that can be found in that whole world, I was excited to see. And of course, Rachel McAdams, she's an incredible actress. She can do a ton of different things, and so being able to see her, stand in there with Will Ferrell doing pure comedy is pretty exciting. And overall, I think I was expecting that this to be a little bit more laugh out loud funny, and it really wasn't that. There was some interesting kind of there were some funny moments in it and stuff, but ultimately it was actually surprisingly, the story of itself was pretty touching, but the actual comedy kind of fell a little bit flat sometimes. And so it was a little bit of a mix of some sort of kind of obvious improvisational stuff from Will Ferrell. And Rachel McAdams did a really good job of actually having the heart of this film. So her character was, not so secretly in love with Lars throughout the film, and they do a really nice job with the overall plotting of this film. But essentially, as I thought about it more and more, I was a little bit let down on this, and I think that the actual casting of Will Ferrell in this movie, even though he's one of the co-writers on it, it's kind of actually similar to Zoolander, where actually Ben Stiller's character was the protagonist who had this big dream and had the pressure from his family to do the thing that his family has always done. And so that Will Ferrell's kind of taking on the protagonist role in this. And I actually think that that he would have been a little bit better suited playing kind of one of the other already established Eurovision stars in this, and because that he's very good at finding the humor in playing somebody who is kind of the best, even though he's ridiculous. And so in this, he's just kind of flailing about doing ridiculous stuff. And the story is that she's in love with him, and ultimately he's kind of unsympathetic in this particular role. Where actually, someone like Ben Stiller in the Zoolander role, you can kind of follow his pain a little bit more. So I actually think that there was a character that Dan Stevens plays, Alexander Lemtov, who was this really funny Russian, kind of the winner of the Eurovision contest, the favorite of it. And that was actually a role that I actually thought not exactly that type, but that role would have been a little bit better suited for Will Ferrell than the actual protagonist. But all this being said, ultimately this film was still pretty enjoyable. I was expecting it to be a little bit more kind of put together, a little kind of work a little bit better, and ultimately, there's some things that I think kind of fell apart from like a technical point of view from the filmmaking of the story of it. Um, but overall, it was still pretty enjoyable. So I would give it a C, even though it's really not a very good movie. It's still there's enough kind of juice and fun and world building, and even Will Ferrell just is kind of it's nice to see a Will Ferrell movie in this time. So it's a C, even though it's not a very good movie, if that makes sense. So yeah, check it out. It's on Netflix, and I'll be coming with some more reviews really soon. So I'll talk to you guys later.